Joining me now to discuss the violence in South Sudan is John Dau. He joins us from Syracuse. He is one of the Lost Boys of Sudan who was forced to flee Sudan in 1983 during a previous civil war. He founded the John Dau Foundation, which aims to improve healthcare in South Sudan. Also with us, Dr. Chuol Kuek, a psychologist and South Sudanese Community Leader. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for joining us. John Dau, let me start with you. As we heard from our reporter, there was a mass killing in South Sudan just a few days ago. Hundreds of people were killed. In fact, it was so horrific, it led The Economist magazine to say it plumbed a new depth of hell. How did this civil war start, and how did it get to escalate to this stage where we are seeing atrocities that we haven't seen for a long time?
Thank you for having me. How the civil war or this current conflict started in South Sudan actually started because of two people. The current president of South Sudan, Mr. Salva Kiir Mayardit, and his former deputy vice president, Dr. Riek Machar. These two leaders actually brought us to where we are today. It started with a simple kind of a power struggle. When you heard of power struggle in some other countries, there's ways that you can, iron out your differences and how you can get into power. They mismanage it, they disagree and mismanage that disagreement, and that actually spill over into what is known today as a civil war started in South Sudan.
John Kuek, these two leaders that John Dau just spoke about, Salva Kiir and Riek Machar, they were once allies. What led to the fallout?
Well, thank you for having me. I think it's power struggle. I can just put it like that. They have been, good friends for the last 10 years, where they worked together for the government of South Sudan. I think what led to this is just a point that John Dau just made. Salva Kiir has been a president, and there's a term limit in South Sudan according to our constitution. And the vice president, the deputy of Salva Kiir, Dr. Riek Machar, also wanted to, take the opportunity also to run for the president of South Sudan. I think based on this, that what I meant power struggle. The president wants to stay on, and the vice president wants to have a chance also to be a president of South Sudan. I think this simple issue led to this civil war, in my opinion.
Okay. John Dau, when we look at the way the war has evolved over the past few months, you have two major tribes in South Sudan. You have the Dinkas, and you're a Dinka, and then you have the Nuers, and John Kuek is a Nuer. Is this essentially a tribal war that we're looking at here when we look at the fault lines of which group is on each side?
Well, the direction that conflict has taken nowadays, and actually how it started too, it has some tribal dimension to it, or a tribal element to it. Why? Because President Salva Kiir, who is a Dinka, my tribe, seem to be getting more support from the Dinka community, and of course have some element from the Nuer tribe also with him, but they are not majority compared to the Dinka that are supporting him. That is the truth. It is the government that is using all the resources, especially whoever then that is part of the government is fighting the rebel. On the other hand, Dr. Riek Machar, the rebel group are predominantly Nuer, although there are some tribe element in his rebel group, but mostly these are Nuer. And so it has taken that dimension, it has taken that direction. Why? Because these two leaders actually failed to make their point to other tribes. Their bases seem to be turning into a tribal basis at this point. This is the truth, and that's what has been happening. The Nuer against the Dinka against Nuer. But when you look at this, it could not be said it's Dinka against Nuer, But the people that are fighting alongside these two leaders or that queue the line behind these two leaders, they seem to be predominantly Dinka, predominantly Nuer. That is the truth.
John Kuek, here's one criticism I've heard of South Sudan, and it's something that people attribute to the violence. It says here that the leaders of this new country, the world's newest country, failed to build a functional state. What happened immediately after South Sudan became independent, that the oil revenues, and it has substantial oil in this country, and most of its revenues come from oil, the oil revenues were used to expand the army and enrich the elite. That was what appears to be the priorities when the country became independent. Is that a fair assessment?
To me, yes. This country is rich in comparison to other African countries. It's rich in oil, it's rich in other natural resources such as gold and wild animals and rich soil where you can cultivate and get your food there. Since the independence of South Sudan, if the wealth of the country has been used appropriately, meaning use that money to build infrastructure in the country, build a school, build hospital, this country would have been a better country in East Africa compared to any other country around there. So the wealth of the country has been mismanaged. Who is to be blamed on this? I think it's the government. The government is to be blamed on this. So now the country run into this civil war again because, for one thing, the country has not been managed right, okay? And to me, in my opinion, is a fair judgment, like you put it, okay? And in my opinion, the president is at fault in this, and the whole administration. And that's why many people sometimes criticize the vice president for, for having a hand into this. If the country has not been developed, who is to be blamed?
Okay,
These are the two presidents, the two leaders running the country.
Right, let me get the view from John Dau. John Dau, do you agree that much of the blame for this war should be laid at the door of the government?
The failure the failure that we've been seeing in South Sudan at this point of not building the country and bringing the country to where we were expecting it to be brought to, I think, yes, it squarely should be blamed on the government. And when you talk about the government, you talk about Salva Kiir Mayardit, you talk about Dr. Riek Machar, you talk about all the other leaders who were running our country for the last 8 years, that actually all of them fail. And they fail considerably because they want to make themselves wealthy. And of course, if you look at their bank account, of course, I don't have evidence in anything, but if you look at their bank account now, they have millions of dollars that they have stolen. That is the bad thing. South Sudan, as Dr. John Kuek, my friend Dr. John Kuek said, that there is no piece of development. If you look at there is only one paved road, and that is connecting Uganda to Juba, which is Juba, South Sudan. That road has been built by the USAID. Other things that were done by the United Nations agencies or other good-hearted people from United States, from UK, Europe, and of course Australia and Canada, and all over the world. They have poured in some millions of dollars to actually start schools. For example, the John Dau Foundation clinic that we have built, it was built because the money we get from United States. And why? And so many other projects that has been built in South Sudan, primarily they came from different countries. And so why? That's what Dr. Kuek was saying. South Sudan is very wealthy. We have oil, we have rainfalls, a lot of water. So we should not be, so for. Our government should be blamed for the lack of infrastructure, for the lack of development in the last 9 years. This is a long time.
Okay, John Dau, let me ask you this. To what extent is this violence, is the civil war being fueled by outside interests, perhaps by neighboring countries?
No, really, I cannot say it has been fueled by outside interests. It started by these two leaders although there are outsiders that are now getting involved, such as Uganda and Northern Sudan, which is, of course, Sudan, and then some other element, they got in later after our two leaders started the war. So it was not started somewhere else. It was not started outside. And actually, you heard that this war had been fueled by the diasporas, which means they are blaming us, Dr. Kuek, myself, and others, those who are in Australia and in North America and, of course, Europe. They are blaming the outsiders, including other government. But really, if you look at this, it was not started outside. It is about them. They mismanaged their disagreement. They miscalculated how this disagreement over power struggle will boil down to.
Okay,
so it is them.
Right. I want to go to John Kuek. At one time, John Kuek, we understand that the European Union and the United States, for that matter, tried to keep the peace by paying off warlords in the country. But now they're looking at a different strategy. Now they want to impose sanctions on leaders, targeted sanctions. Do you think that's going to work?
I don't think it's going to work. You mentioned something. You asked John Dau about outsider being involved in the country. That really caused this war to continue. I would allude to something in that. Yes, Uganda has been involved from the first place. President brought Uganda. In my opinion, this wasn't the war in South Sudan. This sanction that we're hearing now on the news, I don't think is going to work. Because for one thing, Uganda has been there. Uganda has been asked by the IGAD, the regional authority, that is the peace facilitator in Addis Ababa right now. And until then, Uganda has not pulled out. So what will this sanction do? It will freeze some money, some financial resources, for some leaders in the government.
Okay, John.
So it's not going to stop Uganda being there in the country.
Right, John Kuek, we're running out of time, and I just want to get one other issue in, and that is the presence of the United Nations peacekeeping force in South Sudan. There's about 10,000 troops there, ostensibly put there to keep the peace. It doesn't seem that that's working, is it?
Well, it's not working. If it does work, people have not been, would have been massacred in War Unimis camp. A lot of people, over 100 people have been massacred in the watch of United Nations. The same thing would happen again, if United Nations, does not change the way it provides protection. To me, protection means if someone tries to kill somebody in your watch, you got to do something about it. So it's not really working, in my opinion, unless something changes.
Okay, let me go to John Dau. John, we're running out of time here. We've got about 40 seconds. What is the refugee situation like right now? Because we understand that the war has already displaced something like 50,000 people who have left the country. Is it getting worse?
It's getting worse every single minute. Many people have been, many citizens of our country, the Republic of South Sudan, have been displaced. Some are in IDP, which is internal displaced person camp. They've been displaced. Some are also in other countries such as Uganda and Kenya and North Sudan, and of course Ethiopia. This is very bad. Okay. They have nothing to eat. Most of the time they sleep outside. No medicines, no schools. It's just a problem. When you look at this, why did these leaders brought this terrible situation on our people when they can just sit down and say, okay, here is what I could do. I want to be a leader from this time to this time, and then you will be the leader from this time to this time. So it's a terrible phenomenon.
Okay, looking at some kind of power-sharing government. John Dau, John Kuek, thank you for joining us.